Effective leaders have the ability to get results through others. They are willing to exercise their leadership in such a way that their team is empowered to make decisions, share information, and try new approaches. Do you give your team the opportunity to assume more responsibility, or do you keep telling yourself that they're not ready yet? Here's the truth. You can't make people listen to you. You can't make them execute. You may think you can, and in some cases it may appear to be a temporary solution for a simple task. But if you want people to implement real change, if you want people to accomplish something truly complex or difficult, you have to lead them. It's that simple. You can't make people do things. Instead, you have to coach, develop, and empower them to want to do it. Empowering your team to act starts with a belief in the mission. See, a leader has a responsibility to not just explain what needs to be done. They have a responsibility to explain why the mission is important in the first place. They're not just communicating the mission to their team. They're translating it in a way that others can truly understand and rally behind it. Communicating the mission is only one aspect of a leader's job. Ensuring everyone understands the mission is the other. As a leader, you are only as good as your team. It's your obligation to help people be successful. And the only way to do that is to empower them to act. See, successful people know that action changes things. Let me explain 3 ways that you can empower your team to act, because I think that's really important. First, take the handcuffs off. See, most teams play small because they're worried that they will make a mistake, so they hesitate. They doubt themselves. They overanalyze things, which slows progress and in many cases prevents any movement forward. Instead, teach your team to ask, what's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, seriously, think about that. What is the worst thing that could happen? Usually when you break that down, you will realize the consequences are not as severe as most of us are led to believe. Break the logjam of indecision. Get your team to stop worrying about making a mistake and start focusing on taking action. Take the handcuffs off. Second, challenge your team to come up with multiple options forward and ask them to explain their logic. This is one of my favorite homework assignments that I give my team, right? Especially when we're confronted with a difficult challenge. I ask them things like, if you were king or queen for a day, what would you do and why? Right? It's that simple. I then ask them, hey, do me a favor, come up with a couple scenarios and then be able to defend your logic for each one of those. The intent here is to pull ideas from each option that someone presents and make them better. This empowers thought leadership. And best of all, it gets others people's fingerprints all over the solution, which actually drives alignment and adoption right from the beginning. Third is give your team the freedom to experiment. That also means they have the freedom to fail. Think about that for a second. I say that because if your team doesn't have the freedom to fail, you haven't really given your team the freedom to experiment. People often misinterpret this when I talk about this. They have a false belief that the freedom to experiment somehow endorses mistakes. Making a mistake is never the problem. It's what you do afterward that really counts. See, effective leaders encourage their teams to courageously experiment, to thoughtfully exercise discipline, to consciously reflect on lessons learned, and to efficiently adapt to changing conditions. And the only way you can do what I just described is if you have the freedom to experiment. Good leaders understand this when I explain this to them. Good leaders understand that life itself is a process of trial and error. People learn from taking action. People learn from the miscues they make and from the feedback they receive. The truth is we all make mistakes, every one of us. If we aren't making mistakes, you know what? Then we're likely aren't trying enough new things outside our comfort zone. And that, by the way, in itself is a mistake. That process itself is the best way to learn and grow. Effective leaders allow their people the freedom to make mistakes, right? And good employees are those who, when they make mistakes, right? When the mistakes are made, they learn from them. They own them. They fix them. And they put safeguards in place to ensure the same mistakes never get repeated. I get passionate about this for obvious reasons, but I have to ask you a question. Do you foster an environment that gives your team the freedom to experiment? Ask yourself that. If you want to learn how to ignite a newfound level of energy, focus, and momentum in your team, go get a free copy of my new book, Freedom to Experiment, right? Go get that book, right? And I'll unpack this for you in much greater depth. The link is in the description if you're interested. Okay, if you like this video, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up, share a key takeaway in the description below, in the comments, and of course subscribe, because each week I'm sharing content to help you and your team embrace change, focus your efforts, and accelerate results. Remember this, you're just one idea away. I'll talk to you soon.